and I think it's a good time to start the meeting. I see all of our principal administration folks, President McGinnis, Provost Bernstein, and of course, Ken Kashansky right there. So I think we'll call this meeting to order. So my name is Richard Larson. Was elected, became president-elect of the Senate December of last year, emerging from a crowded field of one to take that position. I was installed like an air conditioner on the 1st of July, and I am now the Senate president. We have been working quite actively.
You're muted, Richard.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm not. I'm not muted. So the Senate has been working quite actively with administration over the course of the summer, both the executive committee and also members of the Senate who have sat on task forces and planning groups in preparation for the opening just a week ago. I'm very hospitality has been extended to the Senate in these deliberations, the sense that we're all working on this together. I think presages very, very well for what promise to be very, very difficult times. I will, as usual, then introduce the senior administration figures to say a little bit and also to take questions. A little bit later, as you know from the agenda, we have an election. We have an outgoing Secretary Treasurer, that is Pamela Wilskill, who has served very ably, and we're very grateful to her for the last 2 years. She'll be replaced by Rich Stein if the election goes his way. Again, a crowded field of one. And so I will begin then by introducing President Maury McGinnis and invite her to address the Senate. President McGinnis.
Thank you for that, Richard, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see such a large collection of faces in the Hollywood squares on the screen in front of me. I know that you all have my written remarks, but if you all will indulge me, I will also highlight and expand on a few things that are in there. But at some point in some way, either at the end of our remarks during Q&A, or maybe in feedback that you could give to Richard, let me know if these kinds of written remarks are useful. I know it's been a tradition here and we just followed the same format, but is this the kind of information that's useful to receive in advance? Is this productive? Just please give me that feedback at some point if you all want to continue it in this format. What I'd like to do is touch on a few details related to the fall semester, the budget process, the provost search, and then I'm certainly happy to take questions if we have time. So we're on day one of our second week of the semester, and everything is still going very well, I am pleased to say, and this really is because of the extensive and very thoughtful planning that the campus community did with very helpful input from many Senate members who were members of different committees, and we're very appreciative of that work. Some of this is because the campus took a lot of precautions in advance of moving students in. Each of our roughly 4,500 residential students was expected to both quarantine at home before coming, but then also provide evidence of a negative COVID-19 PCR test in order to move into their rooms. We've done an enormous amount of work norming student behavior, as well as thinking very creatively of things that we can give them to do that is safe, that allows them to have things to do in a socially distant or online way, but that gives them something to do. As we all know, idle hands, ... So we're trying to keep them from being idle. And the student affairs teams deserves great credit for really some very ingenious planning of activities, and everything seems to be going well. If anything, one of the biggest problems we have is many of our students feeling isolated and lonely, that, you know, after months of kind of sheltering in their homes, and then so much emphasis on stay away from everybody and wear your masks. Like, we're really having to work to try to get them to engage with one another. We did suspend 3 residents from campus housing as a result of a guest policy violation or plans for having more students than were acceptable in gatherings. Those didn't really come to pass. We learned of them in advance, but those students have been suspended from campus housing while the conduct investigation continues. Classes seem to be going very well. We've had great reports of how everything's working. The vast majority of our courses are happening in a remote way. Probably close to 3/4 of our classes in that way. And that's a mix of synchronous and asynchronous classes. Some of our courses are hybrid. And then we also have several hundred courses that are taking place in person as well. As far as I've been able to see, as far as all the reports that are coming in, we really have very good compliance across campus with face coverings. Classroom cleaning protocols are outlined in our facilities plan. All of this is related to CDC guidelines for this. If there were to be a positive case and an individual in a room, that room would be shut down. And we have an outside company that comes in and the space gets cleaned thoroughly as well as quickly. You should have all received, or if you haven't, you should soon receive a sort of one-page attachment that will outline protocols that you should follow should you have a student or an employee who reports an illness. Please follow these protocols. In short, I would say if it's a student, please call student health. And if it's an employee, please call the health information line. Both of those begin a process that allows us to track and do contact tracing, to allow us to put the necessary cleaning protocols in place. It is the thing that triggers all of the other things that need to happen on campus. If you haven't looked at it, our COVID dashboard is online and has a lot of information about what's going on campus. At present, it is updated once a week, but we are looking at data flow that would allow us to update that more frequently. The link's in my written report. It's in the most recent edition of Coming Back Safe and Strong. And I urge you to read these weekly emails because they will sort of keep you up to date on the latest guidance, the latest resources, everything that's going on campus. I get asked a lot about testing and what we're doing related to testing. So let me to give you where we are at the moment. As I said, all residential students were required to present a negative test result before checking in. We have on-site walk-up testing that is part of our surveillance testing program. We send emails, mostly right now working through residential halls, sending groups of students to go get their surveillance testing, and we've had great compliance. Students are showing up, students are doing what we need them to do so that we can continue to use surveillance testing as a way to keep our campus healthy and safe. We have in place the processes for contact tracing. Faculty and staff can continue to use the South P lot if they wish. That is still in place. And we have signed up for the SUNY pooled testing when and if it is up and running. So we could maybe be adding that to our testing capabilities. And we're actually in conversation on a whole bunch of other ways to add to our testing. I will just say nationally that many of the companies that make promises about, oh yeah, we'll get you a machine, or oh yeah, we'll get you these reagents, or oh yeah, we'll get you these testing kits, We're not making any promises because they have failed in their promises to us again and again. So we're really thrilled with the partnership at Enzo. That alone gives us great capability, but we'll bring more online should it become available. In terms of returning to work, we are all currently working under a telecommuting agreement that SUNY had issued. It expires in October. Currently, that has not been extended. And we will keep you posted on that, as that is not something that we control, but we are certainly in conversations with them about that. Happy to take questions at a later time. Or Richard, would you rather me do questions now and then talk about budget, or go through everything? You're muted.
Sorry, why don't you continue?
Okay, so let me talk about budget. I thought it was very important that we get as much information about institutional finances out to the entire campus community, as well as to begin our conversations about how we plan to deal with our budget, both in the short and the longer term. By now, I hope that you have had a chance to read my initial budget message, and that you've hopefully had time to spend time on the website, or maybe you were able to attend one of the 7 community conversations. If you've not done so, please go to the Achieving Financial Sustainability part of our website and review the materials. We have also now posted one of those online conversations in case you were not able to join us. We did have more than 1,700 people from campus join one of those 7 conversations. So we had really great attendance, and I'm appreciative of that. My goal since April, when I sort of began getting engaged with Stony Brook, it was very clear to me that the pandemic was having and was going to have in the future really significant impacts on our budget. And so I wanted, as much as possible, to make sure that the campus community was in the same place about where we are now, but also how did we get here? What were the historical underpinnings of why Stony Brook is where it is? So I had tasked our finance team with developing material that would help bring everybody up to speed, to set a foundational knowledge that will allow us to begin these more strategic conversations. And I also asked the team to think about how can we get through this year with as little pain as possible, thinking especially about our educational and research missions. How could we hold down spending as much as possible without actually doing anything that was going to hurt us in the long run? What that basically means, though, is that we will be eating through cash reserves that, frankly, I wish were more significant than they indeed are. When I began as president on July 1, and we really started digging into this material in a more in-depth way, we all thought we were going to be sending one message out. But I can tell you, as July went on and as August went on, it seemed like every day we were getting new news, either from SUNY or from the state, that meant the news was worse. And we had to keep updating our materials and in some ways delaying the information because we had to process what the implications of the new information meant to our budgetary situation. There have been many things that, could have broken one way or another, and every single one of them is not broken in our favor. A good example of that was that SUNY was given legislative authority to raise tuition $200, as well as they could have voted to increase the academic excellence fee, which is a very small way that they acknowledge that the 4 U centers have both a different mission and a different cost structure from the rest of the SUNY campuses. They failed to do that. And that, of course, has a significant budgetary implication for us. Because of our decision to not play any sports in the fall, we decided to cut the athletics fee that was charged to our students, and we passed that cut along to athletics as a cut. That is not an institutional savings in that way. It is merely a reduction in the money to athletics that corresponds with the reduction in the fee that we charge to our students. We have many fewer students in our residence halls than we could have accommodated. So of course that continues to be a financial hit on the institution as well. One of the more surprising things that happened is when it was time for the state to send us the last allocation of the last fiscal year's amount of money, we found that that was reduced nearly $20 million. So that's a kind of retroactive cut. We've obviously already spent all that money. The fiscal year is done. So that just took more money out of our cash reserves. And we've been told to anticipate a 20 to 30% cut, not just for this fiscal year, but for the years going forward. And as you all know, we had a significant reduction in the number of international students joining us this year. And then I'll add one more. As you know, that one of New York's signature programs in support of students receiving a higher educational degree is the TAP program, the Tuition Assistance Program. And the state provides some funding for us that we give to our students in financial aid. And our students need and expect this money. And as you may know, they've only been funding that at the 2010 tuition amounts. So we've been funding that gap. So it's often referred to as the TAP gap. And that's been costing us $9 million. They also told us that our allocation for next year will be reduced again below 2010 amounts. And so that will cost us an additional $5 million in support for our students. As you know, we also have many costs associated with COVID, whether it's the ways in which we've altered campus or the additional supplies or the additional cleaning we've needed to bring on board, things like that. So obviously, this is a very difficult situation. As a reminder, here are some of the actions we're taking this year. We've continued the financial year of the current hiring freeze for both new positions and ones that might come open this year. Obviously, this is not a sustainable strategy. This is merely a stopgap measure. And it's not that we're actually freezing every hire. We've laid out very clear processes that units can use for absolutely critical positions, and many of those are being approved, but we have to hold on to some of those as vacancies this year, just as a necessary way and a prudent way to control our costs. We benefited greatly from some work that had been done with SUNY and student housing refinancing, and thank goodness we have that, because that just means that hole is a little less deep than it would have been otherwise. We're working really hard to try to control our out-of-pocket spending, but there's some things we're obviously going to continue to do. I mean, I think just last week we approved a number of our library subscriptions, which are the ways that our faculty have access to a lot of the research they do. We obviously have to continue spending that money, but in places where we can hold our spending down, we've been doing that. As I said, we gave a $2 million cut to athletics, although that doesn't really help the institutional budget, but it did help our students. And the senior campus leadership has taken a 10% pay cut, as well as foregone their 2% raise for all management confidential employees. In the course of budget conversations and our campus conversations, I was really heartened that we had quite a number of faculty staff write in and also ask about taking a voluntary pay cut through this year in order to help. And we will be sending information to campus about that. That is something that is allowed under our various union contracts, and we'll send that information out. And to get through the year, we will tap our already too low cash reserves. That's just this year. What is next? So to successfully address our budget over the next few years, we must, as a community, begin a more substantive series of conversations about our future. So I will be establishing a strategic budget process that will involve faculty, staff, and administrators, and that will allow every faculty and staff member who wishes to have input to be able to do so. And I will announce recommendations for what this looks like in the next couple of weeks. From an advocacy perspective, we are fighting on all fronts. I work very closely with my youth center presidential colleagues, my SUNY colleagues, and we are working to develop proposals for consideration that would reframe our relationship with SUNY and its regulatory and financial policies. We are obviously already beginning our conversations with key legislators as well. In fact, this morning I just spoke with the chair of the Senate Higher Ed Finance Committee, or Higher Ed Committee, and outlined in detail for her the issues we will be facing, and received a very strong pledge from her of wanting to partner with us in thinking about options. We are doing significant advocacy also at the federal level, working closely with the New York delegation and in concert with the AAU, the APLU, ACE, and the many other different higher ed lobbying groups. I'm doing everything I can to try to moderate the impact on this year's budget. I'm hopeful we can stick to this. But I need y'all's help. I need campuses' partnership in this. This is our time to come together and work together, not to point fingers, but to actually think creatively. We need to be willing to put everything on the table and examine what we do and how we do it, and ask ourselves, what new ways can we raise revenue? What new academic programs can we create? What new partnerships can we form? What efficiencies can we achieve by working together in ways that are maybe new? This is certainly not how I wanted to start as a new president, and I'm certain it's not how you all wanted your year as academic and Senate leaders to be going as well. We will be in conversation regularly. The Senate will be a part of this strategic budget initiative, and as I said, all faculty and staff are going to have the opportunity for input. All ideas are good ideas. This is not a time to ever knock anybody's idea down, but instead to put them on the table and think about them and figure it out. Sometimes it may not survive exactly as it was first put on the table, but sometimes there's a kernel in the middle of it, something that may even sound really ridiculous at first. There may be great wisdom at the heart of it. So this is a time really for us to all think about how, as one Stony Brook, we can move this institution forward, focusing on the excellence that is already here, continuing to build on that excellence, figuring out how to use the power of partnerships to come together to build a stronger Stony Brook for the future that continues to provide an excellent education for our students, that continues to allow us to be an engine for both socioeconomic as well as for socioeconomic mobility for our students and economic mobility for Long Island and for New York. And I look forward to working with you all on this. Another big thing that's going on, of course, is the provost search. And thank you to both Pam and Michael, who are serving on that committee, and for the leadership of Esther Takeuchi and Nina Mong, who are the co-chairs for the provost search committee. And I'm very pleased. We've already been able to charge the committee. I've been asked to maybe share some of my thoughts about what makes a great provost with this group. Richard thought it was cogent. Whether I can do it again as cogently, and I'll do it more briefly, Richard. But just for this whole group, if you haven't really thought about what a provost does, it's important to understand it, frankly, is one of the very hardest jobs on campus. And I've now been in both roles, and I'll put provost right up there as a really difficult job. The provost, as the chief academic officer, is in charge of all things academic. Student success, hiring and retaining faculty, academic programs, working with deans and department chairs in setting academic and research strategy. And it's a really detailed management. You really have to have your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on with faculty and students and know every problem that is happening out there, because you're often the one who has to solve those problems as well as think strategically about the future. But you're also the number two to the president, and you have to be, very much part of that leadership team in making decisions. But then if you disagree, you still got to be right in line with whatever the president has decided. There really can't be any daylight. Leadership always needs to be unified. And the number two really needs to be focused on the management and running of the campus, because the president often has a gazillion external obligations. That means sometimes the president can't be here. Little different in our COVID world, but in the long run, it won't be, because that day will come when we're all back out there and traveling again. What I hope to find in a provost is somebody who is an academic strategist, who can really think about where is the academy going in the future, both in terms of research and in education. To be a provost means that you need to get your joy from the success of others. Your joy comes on a daily basis from the great work of your faculty and students. You need someone who has an excellent job of leadership potential, who wants to grow and nurture leadership potential on our campus and develop great internal academic leaders. You want someone who understands policy. Even though policy can be boring, policy is often at the heart of what enables us to create the kind of systems that make for good governance, that make for the kinds of a campus where we grow and nurture great faculty talent, where people want to build their lives and careers. And you need somebody who understands systems and how everything works together. You need someone who's got both big P and little p political savvy, who understands the politics on campus, but also understands that external world and how things are going to play to that external world. And you really need somebody who's a team player, who wants to build coalitions across campus in order to leverage Stony Brook's very best. There are a lot of different kind of experiences that lead to this. Somebody might have been a vice provost, or there are a million different terms that are used, but might have been in a leadership position in a provost's office, in a vice president for research's office, as a dean. This is going to be a big, complex year. So hopefully this is somebody who has a track record, who's done this kind of leadership. Maybe somebody who's done this at an AAU or peer institution, and who will be a great complement to me, who brings strengths that I currently don't possess. So that's the world that is going on in the provost search. So those were the updates that I wanted to provide, Richard, and if we have time, I'm happy to take questions.
I think Naz or Pam, or both of you, you're going to handle the questions, is that right? Do we have
Yes, we have a question in the chat room from Professor Oleg Smirnov in political science, wondering about the increase in graduate student fees. I know in the executive committee for the Senate, we have discussed this, and it's a particularly hard-hit time because, well, we know our graduate students don't get a very large stipend anyway, and living on Long Island is very expensive, and so this increase in graduate student fees is really hitting them hard, and we'd like you to address that.
Sure, I'm happy to. I mean, as you know, I'm barely here 2 months. And a lot of this is stuff that I'm still getting up to speed on. I would say it's one of the many things that we should put on our table. I would say not just graduate student fees, but really everything related to our graduate education, not only how we're funding them, but the education we are providing to them. Thinking hard about whether the curriculum and programming that we are giving them is actually preparing them for the careers that they want to go into. Thinking hard about how our curriculum aligns with their time to degree. Thinking hard about the professional experiences that we are giving them along the way during the course of their education. All of that should be part of the conversation. I understand fully the concerns that the graduate students are raising. I will also just say that these decisions emerged after long engagement that happened before I got here and probably even before COVID. On those fees. Those fees fund a whole lot of things that all of our students, including our graduate students, rely upon. And so, we'll continue to work on it. We're continuing to work directly with individual students who are having trouble paying these fees. Some departments have been working directly with their students. So it's a complex situation that we as a university will continue to be focused on and see what solutions we can come up with.
Thank you for that answer. And if you haven't had the privilege yet to meet Dr. Sanders, he has a question out for you about our new chancellor. Jonathan, do you want to unmute and ask?
Unmute, Jonathan.
I know people have been trying to mute me for years. Welcome. First, let me say that your level of transparency and actually telling us many of the things that are going on, both in actuality and your mind, is a refreshing change. Not a change from Michael Bernstein, but a change from previous incarnations of so-called leadership. I wonder if you've had a chance to speak with the chancellor yet. And I know that the chancellor's experience, besides when he was an assistant to the previous chancellor, was largely at the University of Albany. I wonder if he has spent any time at Stony Brook. If he has not spent time at Stony Brook, sometime might it not be a good idea for him to come down here and to spend time with some of us and to see things that are going on and get the perspective here from Long Island? I wouldn't invite him when hurricanes are coming, but that's another matter. And again, welcome, and thank you for the glasnost.
Thank you. I have not yet met the chancellor other than on the large kind of all presidents calls that we have regularly. We are working on finding a date to invite him to Stony Brook. I don't actually know whether he's been here in the past or not. All three of his degrees are from the University of Albany, as you say. But everything that we are hearing is that this chancellor is a chancellor who really wants to think hard about the current situation and figure out the right solution for SUNY. And we are very much looking forward to that partnership. And we are working on scheduling a call with the 4 youth center presidents directly with him in the near future. So I meet weekly with the 4 youth center presidents, and he should be on our schedule very shortly. So once I'm able to meet with him directly, I'll obviously report back to you all.
Andrew Fleischer has asked if you can speak narrowly to your view of faculty, including non-tenure track faculty and staff retaining their jobs during this difficult time. Now, we know the ground is moving and of course that you don't have a crystal ball, but we're just wondering about your philosophical attitudes towards this specific remedy to budget shortfalls in terms of keeping our faculty and staff.
So right now, that's not been a budgetary lever that we have pulled. So I think that's very important to acknowledge. That has happened on campuses across the US. But that has not been our solution to this moment. We, on an annual basis, assess the faculty that we need to hire to fulfill certain course needs based on student demands. And I know that that can vary from year to year. But I went through our, short-term solutions earlier, and you'll notice that those were not part of those solutions. It is my hope that we will be able to come up with a strategy that enables us to be able to keep all of the faculty and staff who are important to our functioning. That is why we've made the choice to eat into our cash reserves rather than make any of those kinds of decisions that have those longer term implications of not continuing faculty and staff members. Not that we actually even have the freedom to do that now. That's my philosophy. The most important thing for my role as president at Stony Brook is to ensure our excellence as an institution of higher education, and our faculty and staff are key to that. And I'm doing everything I can to protect that.
Richard, do you want to take one more question, or shall we move on to Provost Bernstein's report so we can get through everybody and then maybe come back at the end if there's any other questions?
I think we could take one more question. I think Oleg Viro has a question he would like to ask, or a couple of them actually. So Oleg, if you are there, why don't you post them?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I was very impressed with the changes in the campus. Very good job. But I have a couple of questions about this in details. This is first about social distancing, because I think that the policy of the university override the state policy in some details. Mostly it follows, and this is good. But where it overrides, it is prohibition to open face in the classroom where the social distancing is satisfied, the requirement is satisfied. Either there should be masks on your faces, or you should be a distance from each other. And I think that this is a good statement, and it shouldn't be and instead. Really, what was the reason for both of them? Well, social distancing and masks together changed capacity of rooms of the teaching halls. And after that, just in this way that we use them alternatively. We have distance such that you can have no masks over there. By the way, this requirement is especially important for teachers. Have you given a lecture for 1 hour, 20 minutes in mask? Do you like when students look at your mask instead of your face? It is terrible for everybody. I heard lots of complaints, both from students and from teachers. This is just terrible. In my lectures in logic, I have a distance from the closest students 20 feet. Look, it does not make sense to have a mask. And it does not make sense also for this strict, strange requirements for masks. A mask should be very tight, so face shield is not allowed. And this has absolutely no, from my viewpoint and from any research that I make, this requirement. So I wonder how this extra requirement come. why we do not trust the state policy. I would like to follow the state policy. And why the strict formulations about masks? Because I think that this policy is formulated like laws which allow police to give fee to everybody. We should not be all the guilties because of some strange fantasy of the authors.
Okay, well, we're going to have to cut you off there, but I think you've made the question accurately. I'm going to hold you to one question. President McGinnis, could you please respond? So Oleg is asking about the conjunctive formulation of the mask policy.
So we'll be glad to give you more in-depth answers, but in short, this emerged out of our planning committees, especially our committee that involves infectious disease experts. And there is a lot of science that actually suggests that this is the safest thing to do. We have, for faculty who are having a particularly difficult time making this work, we are happy to work with individuals, but it is actually something that there has been strong support from many faculty on having this policy. So glad to work with you individually and see if we can come up with other solutions, but it is indeed something that infectious disease experts think is the safest way for us to conduct our classes.
Okay, I think we will thank President McGinnis for her remarks and for answering some questions. And we will move on to Provost Bernstein. Oleg shaking his head, but we'll have some chances for other questions at the end. So we can come back to second questions or additional questions in follow-up. Thank you, President McGinnis.
Thank you, Richard.
I want to make a vote.
Provost
I think
Bernstein?
the Senate should express views on this.
But not at this
We are
time.
all experts in a sense. Nobody from this committee taught.
But not at this time. So I'm going to ask Provost Bernstein to come and make some remarks. Michael?
Thanks, Richard. You all have a written report that we distributed from Academic Affairs last week, so I won't go over that report. Just a few brief points here. We did last week send a communication to faculty who are teaching on site during this semester about possibly using seating charts for their students. This would be a step to assist us in potential contact tracing if and when we need to do so. We also did send a communication to deans about managing expectations, just this discussion that just took place. Expectations on the part of students and expectations on the part of faculty regarding the wearing of masks in the classroom in on-site instruction. And we have been regularly convening what we call the Academic Affairs Working Group. This is a committee composed of senior leadership here in academic affairs, as well as representatives from the University Senate, both the Graduate Council and the Undergraduate Council, and representatives from student government, to talk about various policy decisions and practical decisions that have been made as we've launched on-site and a remote instruction here with the start of the fall semester. And on Friday, this past Friday in the afternoon, we did an update with that group. Just some data. First of all, as of last Friday, we were showing a little over 3,350 courses being booked and taught this fall. 2,559 of those at the undergraduate level. As Mari mentioned in her remarks, about 26% of our classes being offered this semester are on site, the overwhelming proportion of those on the so-called West Campus at the undergraduate level. I'll also mention just our day 5 snapshot, as we call it, looking at student census data. Not surprisingly, if we look at the undergraduate data, we are several hundred students down with respect to international students, but several hundred students up with respect to New York State students. None of this probably surprising to any of us. As of the day 5 snapshot, compared to last year at this time, we're down 49 undergraduates. That's going to change in the days ahead as we continue to update these numbers, but I just thought I'd share that with you as of day 5. Also with respect to total full-time graduate students, again, compared to this time last year, we're down a couple of hundred students. And that's, again, I think primarily driven by the loss in the undergraduate census. I think, Richard, I'll stop there. Those were my discursive points in addition to my written report. I'm happy to answer questions as you wish, Richard, as you steward the agenda forward.
Pamela and Naz, who are the technical hosts, could you field questions to Provost Bernstein? Looks like we have one from John. I can't see the full gallery view. I see one from Jonathan, though, prominent as always.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Jonathan.
Michael, has there been a particular impact in any particular graduate department of the number of graduate students? And I'm particularly concerned with how a decrease in significant numbers might impact the teaching of popular undergraduate courses because we're missing good graduate students.
Great question, Jonathan. I mean, the disproportionate impact with respect to, the pressures in international student recruitment and retention have been in engineering, and in particular in fields like computer science and in electrical and computer engineering. Our basic concerns there, Jonathan, have more to do with the impact on the research mission and on the training, obviously, of new generations of doctoral students than on undergraduate instruction. But we are managing some challenges with respect to undergraduate instruction as well, as you can well imagine. But right now, really feeling this in the engineering areas and in some of the basic science areas.
Could people put their little blue hands up, the raise hand function, and I will call on you as I see your hands raise. Kathleen Wilson. Kathleen. Remember to unmute yourself, please.
Okay, sorry. Nice to see everyone. Thank you, President McInnes. This is great to see you, and I really appreciated your open style. However, I'm still stuck on your answer to the question about the graduate student funding. And as a distinguished professor at Stony Brook, I look very carefully at the equity issues that are going on in the university. I don't think it's fair to settle our financial troubles on the back of the students who can least, the graduate students, and those who can least afford it. I would like to ask Provost Bernstein, since he was here during all this, how this came about and how he thinks this is fair. If they are in fact funding services that everyone uses, why isn't it folded into tuition? Thank you.
I think that is a question for Michael. Yes.
Well, Kathleen, I'll give some brief remarks here, to say a couple of things. Your points about tuition, whatever my personal—
Not tuition, the fees. Well, but why aren't those fees folded in? Right, okay, sorry.
You were asking why these costs are not folded into tuition. We do not have control over tuition. This is a matter that, is complicated. Fees have, as a consequence, increased. We have tried to ameliorate some of the impact of the fee rises on graduate students and undergraduates, but we are also struggling to manage our budgets. So we are working carefully with graduate student leadership, and we're trying to do our very best to attenuate some of the burdens that have accumulated for our graduate students. It's going to take a little time.
Okay, may I just say one thing? If that, because I understand the budget you're under, it sounds awful. I'm glad you guys make the big bucks. I really am, haha. But Can't we do something? Can we subscribe as senior faculty to a fund to pay these fees? Can we do something can't we do anything about it? This is insane. They are losing 1/4 of their semester's money to fees. We have to do something. If the administration can't do it, I think the Senate has to. And so this is my call to action. Thank you. I have to go teach at 4:30, but contact me anytime. You know my.
We know where you live, Kathleen. Michael, do you have anything else in follow-up? It's basically a distribution question, but is there anything? And I don't know what mechanisms exist outside of that for the funding that Kathleen's suggesting.
We continue to work on the general issues. I mean, I think a lot of people have been concerned to, do what they can to help out. Mari mentioned the voluntary salary reduction program. That's going to help a bit. These sorts of steps, obviously up to individuals, but most welcome to those who are interested in contributing in that way. In the matter of fees itself, we continue to work on the issue specifically.
Thank you. More questions for Provost Bernstein? I'm not seeing any. I'm not seeing any in the chat. If so, thank you, Michael. We'll let you off at this point, and we will turn to Vice President of Health Sciences and Dean of the Medical School, Kenneth Vishansky. Ken?
So thank you, Richard, and thanks to all. I'll also try to be brief. There is a written report. The hospital, I'll start off with University Hospital. Again, for the second consecutive year, we were determined to be one of the top 100 hospitals in the United States of the 5,000 or so hospitals, which ranks us in the top 2% of all hospitals. For something like the 6th or 7th year, we were determined to be a top 100 hospital in cardiac care, stroke care, and a couple of other areas. We also joined the ranks of U.S. News and World Report top 50 programs this year in orthopedics and the neurosciences. So we're very pleased with that. COVID is on everybody's mind, and so perhaps I'll summarize what this round of COVID-19 looked like on our campus. Over the 5 months or so that we've been dealing with this crisis, we have examined 9,000 individuals at University Hospital, about 5,000 of whom actually had COVID-19. About 1/3 of those individuals were admitted to University Hospital, and I'm very proud to say that despite 1/3 of them being in the intensive care unit and on ventilators, our survival rate, both for all patients in general and for the severely ill, was better than any other hospital system on Long Island. And I cannot stress enough about how amazing our staff, nurses, respiratory therapists, dietary people, physicians, every member of the healthcare team really stepped up during this unprecedented time. And while we're very proud of the efforts, as you all know, this has been a time of severe budgetary challenges. And I'll just give you a couple of numbers to illustrate what East Campus is going through with our budgetary challenges. Although we did receive money from the federal government because of the CARES Act, that amount of money has not even come close to matching the $150 to $200 million revenue losses University Hospital suffered, mostly because of canceled operations and a lot of people not coming to the hospital for their care because of fear of COVID. About $52 million in extra expenses because of COVID-19 and PPE and in people's time, extra service time, and other people coming. And because of the state budget crisis, the normal amount of money we receive from the state of New York and the federal government to care for Medicaid patients and uninsured patients, which this year was supposed to show up on April 1st, $142 million, is now 5 months in arrears. And so that has created serious budget challenges for us in the health sciences side. On the educational front, though, I will say that like the main Stony Brook campus, there has been a lot of effort put forward to pare down, to keep the essential courses in class. And we now have about 85 sections that are in socially distanced classrooms, 27 at the Southampton campus. But of course, in the health science schools, most of the instruction, most of the education is experiential learning, and all of that is going forward in the usual active clinical settings. And so we really do believe that we have adapted and will provide a very high level of education for our students. Just a few last highlights about the various schools. The School of Social Welfare. Last year, the 11 tenure track faculty members produced 54 publications, submitted 41 grants, of which 13 have been funded and 17 more are pending. And the School of Social Welfare graduate student enrollment has gone up 29% from 2019 to 2020. Overall, about 50% increase since 2015. The School of Nursing Online Master's Program was tied for number 7 in the country by U.S. News and World Report, up from number 15 last year. The School of Dental Medicine launched their new digital dental program in the Center for Implant and Digital Technology. The School of Health Technology and Welfare was thought to be the best physician assistant program in the entire state of New York and ranked 15th nationally by U.S. News and World Report. And the Long Island State Veterans Home was also determined to be a top 3% veterans home in the country. So a lot of good news coming out of our health science schools while we are trying to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. And I think doing it reasonably successfully. So written report is available. Happy to answer any questions.
Vice President Koshansky, could you directly address the mask policy in your own view? Now, look, you're a senior health representative here. You talk with all the epidemiologists. You have played a part in all of these discussions. So could you just please yourself address this policy? Because I think it's fairly important for the Senate for you to hear it from, and not the horse's mouth, but from the font of wisdom or whatever.
So thank you for calling me a horse, Richard. I really appreciate that. Just kidding. So I have been on a lot of these committees. Grace Wong at SUNY Central arranged a panel of experts, including people from public health, people from infectious diseases, people from infection control, and we all met every week to try to come up with a cogent, evidence-based program for keeping people safe on the 60+ SUNY campuses. And just as President McGinnis said, the evidence, the majority of infectious disease evidence, the aerosolization when people are speaking, especially in a lecture format or in any sort of exercise format or singing format or any of those formats, that 6-foot social distancing is not rock solid physics and not rock solid science. That is some evidence to suggest that. And so social distancing at 6 feet is a good idea, but we also know that wearing a mask that cuts down on particulate spreading is greatly reducing the risk that even at 6 feet one has. Plus, that doesn't talk about when people are coming in and out of the classroom, when a teacher is circulating around to make various points. So I, for one, do believe that belt and suspenders, if you will, that masks and social distancing is a very appropriate way to keep people safe. We on the health sciences campus have seen the ravages of people, healthy people, people who are predisposed. We have seen the ravages of COVID-19. So I, for one, am supportive, as was virtually everybody on the committee that formulated a response for the campuses. So my personal view of it in response, Richard, to your question.
Thanks very much. Questions? Well, well,
We had
well.
a question from Tom Wilson. He wanted to know from you, Dr. Koshansky, what was the survival rate? And Tom, if you need to expand upon that, please do so.
So during the early parts of the epidemic that we saw here at Stony Brook, it was very hard to calculate an accurate survival rate because you still have 200 patients in the hospital. You don't know if they're going to survive or not. Now that things have calmed down and we are weeks and months since the great peak that we saw, we can calculate an accurate survival rate. Our survival rate was 86% of our inpatients survived and were discharged either to home or a skilled nursing facility or wherever, mostly to home. And even in our intensive care unit patients, our survival rate was approaching 60%, far, far better than what our colleagues in other healthcare systems here on Long Island reported. And so we're actually, any people passing away is a tragedy, no question about it. But given the ferocity of this virus, the fact that we entered into it with so little knowledge about how it worked and how you could prevent it, knowing there were no vaccines at the time, knowing that we had really nothing to offer, I think that, as I said, the people of Stony Brook Medicine stepped up. And like I said, 86%, and that's actually a very, very firm number. And that includes the intensive care unit patients that we cared for.
That is a great number. Thank you.
There are questions also coming up about how administration wants faculty. I guess this is a joint question for President McGinnis, Provost Bernstein, and Vice President Koshansky, how the administration wants faculty to respond to non-mask wearing. You're walking around campus, it's 6 p.m. You see a group of students, they're not wearing masks, not social distancing. How are faculty supposed to get involved in that situation? Anybody want to take that one? Jen, wagging fingers.
Michael?
You know, I can, Richard, I'm happy to just note, you know, we have sent communications to the faculty as well as to the deans and area heads talking about the what ifs with respect to students who may show up in class without masks. We've also done the same, by the way, because we had one incident where there was some confusion about why a faculty member was not wearing a mask in an on-site classroom. So as far as encountering people on campus in settings where someone might feel a mask is necessary, I mean, I think this rests with each individual. You certainly can feel free to remind people that they need to wear masks or to notify student affairs, academic affairs, or facilities teams. I mean, I've encouraged faculty regularly when they see a student, for example, or a colleague not wearing a mask in a setting where they should be wearing a mask, not to assume that this is an act of defiance. They can assume it's an act of forgetting, and just to remind people, oh, you need to wear your mask. 99% of the time, that's exactly what it is. If it's an act of defiance, refer the matter to student affairs in the case of students, or to academic affairs in the case of faculty colleagues, or to human resources in the case of staff colleagues.
I would add to that, Michael, I have confronted individuals who, remember, it's not for your protection, it's for the protection of your friends and colleagues and students and faculty. You can do what you want, you're an adult, your health is one thing, but the health of others is what the mask is for.
Good, thank you. Other questions?
Following up on the mask questions, they want to know, in addition to students walking around after 6 o'clock, what about visitors from the community on campus without masks? How can we address this?
Same way. I mean, I think the visitors should be advised that we have a policy on our campus about masks to protect everybody. Same thing with smoking. I mean, visitors coming to campus, I have, you know, when you walk out into the hospital garage, you definitely know someone's been smoking. And you just need to go up and advise them politely of our policy. And again, we're looking after your health in case of smoking, but also our health, because passive smoke is a problem as well. So polite, but clear.
Thanks very much. I think that's probably the question period, and we should move on to other things. Thank you, President McGinnis, Provost Bernstein, and Vice President Kashansky. Next on the list of agenda items is the UUP report from Carolyn Kuby and Ed Quinn. You UUP folks, are you here?
Yep, I just unmuted. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. Just locally, our chapter has finalized meeting dates. They'll be published this Wednesday, so look for our bi-weekly newsletter that comes out. We'll have the list of some major meeting dates, including general membership meetings. I just wanted to say that I know telecommuting was brought up by President McGinnis. UUP has put that on the table with both SUNY and the Governor's Office of Employee Relations about talking about extending that. So that will probably start up in more earnest as we get closer to the expiration date, as did when they extended it through October. As far as the new chancellor, our Fred Kowal, our statewide president, has been in touch with the chancellor on a regular basis since he started. And they are communicating some of the things that we've been asking for a while, including testing, including funding for SUNY. So there's various things that are happening there. And as far as testing for faculty and staff, that's a discussion that UUP would have to have with SUNY as well. So before that moves forward as a mandatory item. Right now, we're doing that health screening, and I think that's as far as it's going. I think Bruce has some other information from the east side of the campus.
Correct. Thanks, Ed. As far as the East Campus, we have been working together, as the leadership knows, with other organizations, 1199, PEF, CSEA, to make sure that our frontline heroes are recognized, and we're looking to open up a dialogue with administration regarding the recognition of these frontline workers. So that's one thing. In addition, I just wanted to let you know, we've had lots of conversations with the dental school, and the dental clinic will finally be opening up this week after long negotiations with them. As Ed had said, the telecommuting policy is on the table, and we're actively looking to negotiate that with SUNY and the governor's office. And we are also, we want to remind our members and the campus community, for that matter, to continue to press the national leadership, Congress, to support and pass the HEROES Act. As you all know, we're desperately in need of the revenue that was lost during the pandemic, or the major part of the pandemic anyway. And, you know, it's very important for us to get that money, and we need as many voices as we can get to get that through Congress. That's all I have for now.
Ed, one question, or to Bruce. In the last Happy Pay Day, Dr. McGinnis spoke to Management Confidential taking a reduction in salary. And I know in the last Happy Pay Day that was put out, there was information for UUP members, of which most of our senators are part of the UUP bargaining unit. Ever since when you put that out, have you seen much of a response for that? And also the 2% salary increases, which again, President McGinnis said the administration has given up to 2% salary increases. I know that's part of the UUP contract, and that was rescinded temporarily, I think, back in July. What do you know about what's going to happen with that 2% for our UUP members?
Well, right
as
now,
far-
Bruce, go ahead.
Okay, as far as the 2% goes, there's been no communication from the governor's office as far as what's going to be happening with that. As the last communication was that it was delayed until September 30th, and that's really all the information that's come out that I'm aware of, unless you're aware of any additional, Ed.
No, I mean, as far as I know, that will be, had to be negotiated. So we would have to reopen contract negotiations for it to be changed. So it's just suspended by the governor, which I guess he can do as being governor. The other thing is we haven't really heard anything about the voluntary work reduction. But people were interested in that. That's why we wanted to get the information out to people. So if they wanted to take advantage of that and that fit their situation, that would be something that would also benefit the individual as well as the campus. So we want to just get that out. But I haven't really heard a whole lot after we put it out.
Further questions for Ed or Bruce? Okay. As a newbie Senate President, I of course forgot to approve the agenda and the minutes of the previous meeting. Blam. So I asked that we do that now. I'm thinking, Jonathan, could you make a motion to approve both of these things? You'll need to unmute yourself, Jonathan, or we can't hear your voice.
I move that we approve out of order the minutes and the agenda.
Thank you so much for pointing that was out of order. And do I have a second? Axel seconds. All in favor, just raise your flippers.
Aye.
How do we have to do that? Go ahead, tell me. Is that how we can do that? Ed, somebody?
Yes, sure, why not?
Fine, so the motion carries.
I promise not to do this again. All right. We have three more, one important piece of business, which is the election of the new Senate Secretary Treasurer. We have one candidate, which is Rich Stein. He is in, I think, formerly known as CELT, whatever it currently is known. And Rich will I've asked him to make just a few remarks to you before we actually do the voting. So, Rich, I know you're there. Why don't you say a few words about yourself?
Hi, folks. My name is Rich Stein. I am a professional in DoIT. My department is currently undergoing an identity crisis, as always. We've changed our name, I think 4 times in as many years. So as of right now, I am part of the Academic Technologies Services Group, which handles all things Blackboard, Echo, and so on throughout the campus. I've had some time on the East Campus. I've had some time on the West Campus. I was in Fry Hall when Fry Hall had been newly renovated, so I'm familiar with a lot of the faces that are here. Hello, everybody. I sent a statement to Dr. Larson and Pam earlier or just before the semester started up, and Pam and Dr. Larson forwarded those out to the University Senate at whole. So I'm more than happy to take any questions if you have them, but just to keep things moving, I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Yeah.
It doesn't stick this time like the election we did in May. I'm going to hunt you down.
Okay.
Thank you for stepping up and doing this.
And thank you, Pam, for your service in the previous period. Very much appreciated. How shall we handle this? Pam, I think you had an
So Richard, I'd like to just cast one vote on behalf of the Senate body to approve Richard for the Secretary Treasurer for the University Senate for the next 2 years. I believe Ed or Fred can tell me if this is, if I'm allowed to do this. We'll just cast one vote, and if no one's opposed, the motion to approve Rich will carry. Fred?
Why don't you just ask whether there are any objections and then say, hearing none, I cast one vote, and do it by acclamation.
Great.
But you have to ask for objections.
Any objections?
I love this group.
Okay, hearing none, I cast the motion. All in favor?
Oh, you don't.
Aye.
Good.
Okay, so the motion carries.
By unanimous acclamation.
Unanimous
This point in the agenda, okay, so moved and so elected. Congratulations, Richard Stein, to becoming Secretary Treasurer of the Senate. At this point, the president asks, is there any old business? Little blue hands, please. If there is any old business that needs to, oh, Jonathan, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
On old business, which we can pick up on an older time, there is still the issue of faculty or university senate representation on the Stony Brook Foundation. If the Stony Brook Foundation has an ex officio officer as the president, and the foundation does pay the president and makes other disclosures in the interests of openness, clarity, and honesty, notwithstanding the various issues of investment, we need to have at least a distinguished faculty member or someone on both the executive committee of the board of the trustees and on other issues. Yes, it is a 5013C problem, but I know of at least one person in this group who, if we don't get this straightened out, is going to start complaining to the top lawyer in the state of New York about unethical procedures.
Other discussion of this? So the idea is to have a representative?
There is pending and has been pending, I believe, for 7 or 8 months, a resolution that I wrote about this issue pending before both the executive committee and the Senate, and it just has not been acted on because we had other problems to deal with.
I see. Thank you, Jonathan. Actually, I will bring this up before the executive committee again, and I will bring it up with the president in her next meeting with the executive committee to just get her perspective. The president is new to the structure of Stony Brook and maybe hasn't mapped out Stony Brook Foundation where it plays. I don't want to speak for you, President McGinnis, but there are, this is an issue that in fact the Senate wants to speak to you about. It has a number of dimensions to it. Day-to-day dealing with the Stony Brook Foundation is one issue with grants and so on. And there are broader issues as well. So Jonathan, thank you very much for bringing that up. I promise that will be on the agenda at the next executive meeting. And I promise it will also be on the agenda when we speak to the president the next time. We'll try to sort of state what the issues are and how we go forward with this. Thanks. Other old business. There's a question from John Klecker. John, unmute yourself and speak, please.
Thank you. So I have a question about the Campus Community and Safety Advisory Committee that was recently formed in the email that went out on Friday. I'm also a member of the graduate student organization, the Shared Governance Group for Graduate Students on Campus, and nobody in the GSO was informed about choosing a graduate student representative for this committee. So I'm just curious how the graduate student was selected for this. And then I have another unrelated question if there's time.
This is not technically old business, but having not got the agenda in the right place, I'm not going to be able to complain about this. This seems to be a question for administration. Can you just hold that to the end? I promise to.
Sorry.
No, it's not. No problem. I just wanted to know whether there is any other old business besides the Stony Brook Foundation resolution that Jonathan brought forward and which we've decided to act on. None? Then in that case, is there new business? I believe maybe John Klecker's.
Richard, let me just jump in here. This is a question for Sean Heilbrunn. Sean, the question came up when President McGinnis was talking about the budget for athletics and how the program was cut and how much money the athletic department lost. What does that look like for you? What are the implications to the students that were here on scholarships or part of the program? What can you tell us about what's going on in the athletics program?
Well, thank you, Pam, for the question. I can tell you that we're managing through this climate, and our goal is to be great community partners, great campus partners, with minimal impact on the student athletes and their academic success. So from the tutoring standpoint, from the academic success standpoint, we're actually having great success with virtual tutoring, virtual advising. So we're able to provide all of the academic support. The cuts that we will make will be largely operational. Again, just some other areas we're cutting. We're taking away car stipends that some of our coaches had when they're not recruiting, so they don't need the car stipend. Travel reductions we've taken significantly on how we'll travel when we do compete. So we'll certainly share that if there's interest at a later time. But for now, our student athletes are back. They are focused on academic success. They are getting back into workouts, following all guidelines. Everything right now is non-contact. Facial coverings are worn inside the facility. When they're outside doing conditioning, they are removing the face mask, but everything's distanced. Everything is non-contact at this point. And we are working with the NCAA on what those playing and practice seasons will look like, and certainly working with campus leadership on our plans as we move forward. But we are happy to have our athletes back and certainly looking forward to getting back to competition. And, we will certainly figure out the financial piece, because a large, again, part of our program is, we want to, become certainly more self-sustaining as we move forward. So we will make some difficult decisions moving forward. But again, the goal being to serve Stony Brook and continue to be great partners.
Sean, quick question and follow-up. What's your prognostication for resumption of competition?
Richard, I'm on calls literally daily with the NCAA. I'm on the Division I Council that's discussing these issues. So right now, basketball season, a decision will be made on September 16th. All indications are that it will be pushed back from November 10th to November 25th or December 4th. We're talking about regional travel. We're looking at pods on campuses. But that right now for basketball, again, we've got a lot to figure out. That's the NCAA. Then it will be what can we do here? And then as far as fall sports moving to the spring, we're looking at a 6-game conference schedule for football. That would, again, assuming we can do it, would start in February, as well as truncated seasons for soccer and volleyball. And then right now, all of our spring sports, which would be baseball, softball, tennis, track, and lacrosse. Right now, it's scheduled as is as everything else. Stay tuned. But right now, basketball, swimming, and indoor track would be the next up in December or November, December.
Got it. Thanks.
Sure.
Other questions for Sean about sports? I've gotten a lot of questions about it. Jonathan, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
More a reminder, Sean, than a question per se, but I would remind you that in the larger term or the medium term going forward on the issue of the role of American football at Stony Brook University, given what we've learned about CTE, given what the Me Too movement has said about supporting male aggression on university campuses, given what our student body looks like, I think that broader than just athletics, there are a good number of people on the University Senate if you're going to be considering the role of American football in the medium, not the immediate future, in the medium future, we would like to be involved.
Duly noted, Jonathan.
I want to come back to John Klecker's question. John, are you still there? Please re-raise it. We have just a few minutes left. John?
I remember it, Richard. If you want me, since time is getting tight, I'm happy to address it. We will be still adding a couple of members to that committee. As you might know, both the USG and the GSO delayed their elections, which normally would have happened last spring, until early this fall. I thought it was important to go ahead and launch this committee and get this work started. And as soon as we have the new leadership in USG and GSO, we will reach out to them for a recommendation. Richard also reached out to me, I don't know, in the last few days. The days blur a bit. And I forwarded that along also to Vice President Clark and asked her, she'll be reaching out to you for an additional Senate representative. The graduate student who is currently on the committee was appointed to the committee because her research area is directly related to the work that this committee will be doing.
Thanks very much.
And can I say one other thing, just as new business and new news? Just to let you all know that I had asked the team who's been working to build our dashboard to see if there was a way for them to get the updates on cases more frequently, knowing that the community would be interested in that, and it will now be daily updated.
Great.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful.
It's not all data, like PPE data, we're not going to, because that doesn't really change, but the things on case numbers will be updated daily.
I think that's really important. Thanks so much.
Sure.
We're at the end of our time. I think this is probably a good time to conclude. Again, I want to thank Pam Wolfskill for her service as Secretary Treasurer, and welcome to Richard Stein. And again, welcome to President McGinnis. And thank you for addressing us, you, Michael, and Ken. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.